Je donne maintenant la parole à M. Karim Assad Ahmad. Vous avez la parole.
Mr. President and distinguished delegates, it is indeed a singular honour and a privilege to present this first report of the United Nations Investigative Team to promote accountability for crimes allegedly committed by the Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant, also known as Daesh. We intend to outline today our initial strategic vision, the progress made to date in its realization, and our key priorities as we now continue our preparatory work in Iraq ahead of the commencement of more meaningful and substantive investigative work early next year. I would like, however, to begin with the obvious, but something that requires us all, in my respectful submission, to have pause for thought. It is to applaud and to recognize the tremendous suffering, the indefatigable courage and perseverance of those survivors of Daesh crimes. Their fortitude in standing firm and continuing is an aspect that must be recognized and be at the forefront of our minds. In that endeavor, of course, the unity and the united perseverance of the people of Iraq in defeating territorially ISIL is an aspect that must be mentioned. Mr. President, as ISIL has been driven from its strongholds, the scope and magnitude of the heinous acts have become tragically ever more clear. Witness testimony upon witness testimony has revealed unimaginable abuses and acts of depravity. Thousands of our fellow human beings, men and thousands of women and children, have become victims at the hands of ISIL and have become also witnesses to their deeds. By dint of Resolution 2379, this Council responded unanimously with one clear voice to the call of assistance that had been raised by the government of the Republic of Iraq in support of its efforts to hold ISIL accountable, noting that the terrorist acts of ISIL constituted a threat to international peace and security. The Council requested the establishment of this investigative team in order to support domestic efforts for accountability, requiring us to collect, gather, analyze, and store evidence in Iraq of crimes that may constitute genocide, crimes against humanity, or war crimes. In addition, the Council underlined that as Special Advisor and head of the investigative team, I would be required to promote throughout the world accountability for the crimes of Daesh and to work with survivors in a manner consistent with now well-established norms of international human rights norms and best UN practices. And this was for one imperative, for one purpose, to ensure that those crimes are recognized under the law, under that disciplined environment. That aspect is discussed in more detail in our report dated 16th of November. But with your leave, I will move to the next topic of this presentation, which is the opportunity to express gratitude to the Council and the government of Iraq for the significant trust that it has reposed in the investigative team in this important mandate, and to reiterate what should be obvious, which is our absolute commitment to show fidelity to the mandate and to the resolution in a bid to ensure that those who have committed these acts are investigated and pursued in accordance with best UN practice and international law so that we deliver on our mandate. Since the formal commencement of its activities on the 20th of August of 2018, the investigative team has undertaken key preparatory work pursuant to the mandate provided by the Council, in order to provide what we hope will prove to be a solid platform for the commencement of investigative activities early next year. As a result of these efforts, and based on the support of key partners in the United Nations system, including, and I think it must be recognized, the Executive Office of the Secretary General, the Department of Political Affairs, the Department of Field Support, and the unstinting support of the Office of Legal Affairs. The investigative team successfully deployed to Iraq on the 29th of October. In conducting the preparatory activities outlined in our first report, we have been guided at all times by two key imperatives. First is that the team must operate as an independent, impartial, and credible accountability mechanism, capable of conducting all its work to the highest possible standards. And second, the need to ensure that our work is carried out collaboratively and cooperatively with the government of Iraq, with full respect at all times for national sovereignty, in a manner that effectively harnesses the talents and the engenders support from all elements of Iraqi society. As reflected in Resolution 2379 and in the terms of reference of the investigative team, approved, of course, by this Council in February of this year, these imperatives are not paradoxical, nor do they represent opposing weights of a scale to be delicately balanced. On the contrary, Mr. President, the establishment of the team as an independent, impartial entity and the successful and meaningful engagement with the government of Iraq and the broader populace of Iraq in its work represent, in our view, mutually reinforcing principles, which, if harnessed effectively, will allow the team to overcome the many challenges it will face and deliver effectively on the mandate set down by the Council. With a view to ensuring that the investigative team can conduct its work in an independent and impartial manner, in line with the international standards I alluded to a moment ago, we have sought during the first 3 months of our activities to prioritize the development of core logistical, substantive, and administrative frameworks, which have been reflected in the proposed budget of the investigative team that is currently under consideration by the General Assembly. With respect to the first aspect, our logistical arrangements, we have identified former United Nations facilities for refurbishment that will serve as our headquarters and our permanent premises in Baghdad. And plans have also been developed regarding physical and technological infrastructure that will be needed to support the material, the evidence that we will receive and gather as well. And this will hopefully ensure the effective storage of documentary, forensic, and digital information, which will be the foundation of any proper investigation in accordance with international standards. Secondly, with regard to the substantive framework, progress has also been made. Work has commenced on the development of various standing operating procedures of key activities, including the collection, preservation, and storing of evidence and material, but also information management, chains of custody, issues that are going to be critical of witness protection, and initial mapping activities have already been undertaken in assisting us in identifying where key sources of existing evidentiary material may be located. We have also spent quite a significant amount of time, Mr. President, in ensuring that the admonition and the injunction of the Council to avoid duplication is fully observed, and that takes form both of reaching out to other parts of the United Nations, whether in the counterterrorism sphere or in other areas like the Special Advisor for the Prevention of Genocide, to ensure that we harness the capacities, the experience, and the centres of excellence that are there already. All of this is to ensure that the team operates as effectively and efficiently as possible and discharges its mandate. And thirdly, in relation to the composition of the investigative team, requirements have already been identified, both in respect to international staff and also national personnel, and initial recruitment is progressing. In this regard, Mr. President, I wish to emphasize to the Council that I am firmly of the view that the successful integration of the Iraqi national professional personnel into the team will be essential. It will enrich our capacities, allow us to operate more effectively in Iraq, and more fully, more completely fulfill, hopefully, the responsibilities entrusted by the Council. At all times, Mr. President, our objective will be to foster a mutually supportive relationship between the national and international staff and mold it into one coherent, cohesive, unified entity, united by a common principle to investigate acts that may have been committed by ISIL in accordance with the best UN standards and international best practice. In doing so, it is our fervent hope that we will also strengthen the capacity of the team, also assist giving some capacities in Iraq, and deliver the mandate in an independent manner that will hopefully support long-term sustainable efforts that Iraq is focusing on to achieve accountability. Mr. President and distinguished delegates, it's throughout this formative period of our work, these last 3 months, I have consistently underlined the fundamental imperative, the absolute commitment of the investigative team to ensure that its actions are aligned with the principles of the United Nations Charter that remain the foundations of this august body and this institution, and also that we abide by United Nations policies and best practices, including with respect to the transmission of evidentiary material for use in domestic proceedings. As I've emphasized, our adherence to these principles is not only required by dint of the resolution itself, or indeed by the terms of reference which have been approved by the Council, but is essential to ensuring the continued support of the international community and the credibility of this work. It is a remarkable achievement and a sign both of the unity of this Council on this issue and revealing of the criminality of many acts of Daesh, that the Council was unanimous and the international community has this consensus that the rule of law and judicial accountability has an important and indeed critical part to play in properly confronting the phenomena that we have unfortunately witnessed. Mr. President and distinguished delegates, in pursuit of the second imperative of fostering collective support for our work in Iraq, the investigative team has prioritized the development of cooperative relationships with the government of Iraq itself, as well as with the multitude and rich religious and ethnic and regional groups and entities within Iraq. We have reached out to non-governmental bodies and to other key national stakeholders. And as emphasized in our written report, we consider that work will be crucial to the successful fulfillment of our mandate. Reflecting this, during my initial mission to Iraq in August of this year, I met with senior government officials, with many survivors, with civil society groups, and with members of the Christian, the Shia, the Sunni, the Kakai, the Shia Turkmen, and of course Yazidi communities. And in those discussions, I emphasized to all, whoever my audience was, that there is no hierarchy of victims. This investigative team, in seeking to fulfill the mandate of the Council, will ensure that we will focus on crimes committed irrespective of the ethnic group, religious denomination of any human being that has suffered the crimes within our jurisdiction at the hands of Daesh. Following our arrival in Iraq in October, the investigative team has continued to engage with the government of Iraq with a view to establishing clear operational frameworks with our national counterparts. And in this regard, productive discussions have been held already with the steering committee that has been designated under the terms of reference. And we have also are working on and clarifying the procedures that will be the bedrock of our activities. We have liaised productively and continuously with relevant national security sectors in Iraq to ensure that the team can undertake activities in a secure and safe manner. Last week, I had the singular honor and opportunity to meet His Excellency the Prime Minister of Iraq, during which I underlined the commitment of the investigative team to work in support of the domestic authorities of Iraq to ensure that members of ISIL are held accountable for their crimes. And I was grateful to the Prime Minister that in that meeting and afterwards in public statements, he expressed in very solid terms, if I may say so, his continued support for the resolution for the investigative team and also support for our focus on genocide, crimes against humanity and war crimes, and that is to be applauded. Our presence in Iraq has provided the investigative team with the opportunity to continue to engage with various survivor groups, tribal leaders, and other non-governmental bodies. And in this regard, I recently held in-depth discussions with tribal leaders from the Sinjar region, and I have put in place plans to visit that region later this month, as well as other key sites of ISIL crimes. Following its arrival in Iraq, the team has continued to build relationships with a broad range of member states, many of which were initiated here in New York. We look forward to further strengthening these ties in support of our mandated activities over the coming months. The investigative team now looks forward to continuing preparations in Iraq with a view to commencing investigative activities in early 2019. And based on our preparatory activities to date, and reflecting the consultations held with the government of Iraq and other key national stakeholders, I wish to highlight to the Council the following key priorities for action, which are outlined, of course, in much more detail in the report. And the first is the completion of the key infrastructural elements, including the premises of the investigative team and the physical and technological equipment that I've referred to, which is necessary for the storage and preservation of evidence. Secondly is the finalization of core substantive work, which include standard operating practices and the recruitment process that hopefully can kick off once the budget is approved by the General Assembly. Third is the collection, the gathering, the analysis of evidence within Iraq. And by that I mean, of course, by the central government, in the regions, in third states, amongst NGOs, international actors, and neighboring states, is to bring all that information together so it can be subjected to analysis, patterns can be discerned, and of course, it will lead to the fourth stage, which are the activities then of the investigative team to fill those gaps that have been identified. And I look forward, Mr. President, to presenting, God willing, my next report in May 2019, which will provide a more fuller update of these activities. I would, however, wish to be candid, if I may, with the Council in one additional respect. The delivery of this mandate, the successful completion of these activities, requires not just the historic, united, unanimous support of this Council, but a collegiality and a solidarity going forward. Without the political will, the political support from member states that have been fortunately evidenced to date, the significant challenges that are obvious on the face of the mandate will not be overcome. But by the same token, with this solidarity, the challenges, the scale of the evidence will not be unsurmountable by the application of our collective will and the resources available in the international community and within the team. On a related topic, Mr. President and distinguished delegates, I take the opportunity to mention that the proposed budget of the investigative team has been submitted to the General Assembly for consideration. It is my sincere belief that we have presented a very streamlined organizational structure with a limited objective to meet our mandate. There's no fat in that budget. Specifically, we have designed a substantive capacity that will allow us to conduct our work in accordance with international standards and thereby ensure the broadest possible use of evidence within Iraq and within domestic states elsewhere. This plan, this strategy, and this organizational structure is complemented by what is a very lightweight support, mission support mechanism, which draws on existing UN assets in country to ensure the maximum focus of resources where it is needed, which is the substantive work investigating the crimes themselves. It is my hope that the commitment to efficiency demonstrated by our proposed budget is reflected on positively by member states in the coming weeks as it is finalized and approved. In addition, with your leave, I would also wish to take the opportunity to emphasize paragraph 14 of the resolution, which of course created a trust fund. And I do request states to also consider supplementary contributions to the trust fund for key activities. Those activities are not just the security of the team and the staff costs of the team, but include exhumations, DNA analysis, witness support activities. And I would take the opportunity to underscore and state my appreciation for the very generous and absolutely vital contribution that has been made by the United Kingdom, by the Kingdom of the Netherlands, and by the government of Qatar so far. And I also know that various other states are working towards hopefully pledging further support. Mr. President and distinguished delegates, in concluding, I would wish to underline to the Council that the preparatory work completed by the team has reinforced my view that our dual initial imperatives of ensuring independence and seeking cooperation, and demonstrating impartiality and pursuing national engagement do not present a dichotomy. There is no contradiction in upholding independence while supporting national accountability. Indeed, the opposite is true. It is only by establishing the investigative team as an independent, objective, and trusted source of evidentiary material capable of conducting its work to the highest possible standards that we can best support the government of Iraq and other member states in our common and necessary pursuit of accountability and justice. Simultaneously, the realization of our investigative activities is dependent upon securing the cooperation and support and trust of all elements of Iraqi society. It is by harnessing these dual elements, both international and national, that we will be able to successfully fulfill the mandate you, this Council, has provided to us and deliver justice for the victims of ISIL. As we look forward to the commencement of our investigative activities in Iraq, it is, of course, ultimately them and the cause of justice that we seek to support. Thank you.
Je remercie M. Khan de sa présentation.